Beautiful. Again, a hearty welcome to Congregation Nishmat Am's Adult Education Premier Lecture, a series. My name is Yitzchak Cohen. I'm the proud rabbi of this amazing congregation. Today's lecture, which is the third lecture in this provocative and engaging series featuring scholars from around the world on topics relevant to our Jewish community, will be presented by Dr. Navras Aafreedi, which I will tell you a little more about in a moment. And we are certainly privileged to host him. There will be a question and answer period following the lecture. Should you have any questions, please direct them to David Patterson at the chat box. Again, to David Patterson at the chat box. Dr. David Patterson, who made this series possible for us, will moderate the question and answer, the Q&A part. I would also like to say that we are very proud to present this program in conjunction with our community partner, the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy. We truly appreciate, and it's an honor to partner with this very important institute. Dr. Navras Aafreedi is the assistant professor in the Department of History at President's University, Calcutta, India, where he teaches Jewish studies, genocide studies, interfaith studies, and minority studies. His courses in Jewish studies and genocide studies, with a focus on the Holocaust, are the only such courses in all of South Asia. He is a research fellow at the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy, ISGAP, as it is known, and the author of Jews, Judaizing movements, and the traditions of Israelite descent in South Asia. Published in India. He is widely published in academic journals and popular media throughout the world. His lecture presentations and interviews in English, Hindi, and Urdu are available for you on his YouTube channel. Without further ado, it is our honor and pleasure to present for this third of our lecture series, Dr. Navras J. Aafreedi.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Cohen, for your very kind introduction. I'm most grateful to Congregation Nishmat Am for inviting me. I'm also equally grateful to Professor David Patterson for recommending my name, and to Mr. Stanley Siegel for organizing it. In the next 20 minutes that I have, I think it's 25 minutes now. In the next 25 minutes that I have, I shall speak to you about Jews and Muslims in India and Pakistan and their attitudes toward each other. Let me share my screen with you so that you can see what I intend to present. So is the screen visible to everybody now?
Yes.
Great. So I have in this slide two pictures. The picture on the top is the picture of the oldest mosque in India. Islam reached India during the lifetime of Prophet Muhammad, and it reached India before it reached Iraq and elsewhere in the Middle East. When Islam arrived in India, Jews were already resident in the country. So the history of Jewish-Muslim relations in India is as old as Islam itself. This is the rough layout of my talk. In the few minutes that I have, I'll give you an overview of Jews and Muslims in India and Pakistan, the two most populous countries in the region. Then I shall speak to you about the factor that primarily determines the nature of their relations, which happens to be the Muslim attitudes towards Jews. Then I'll speak to you about the range of Muslim attitudes towards Jews, after which I'll underscore the importance of their attitudes towards Jews in South Asia, after which I'll speak to you about Jewish attitudes towards Muslims, following which I'll speak to you about the measures required for the promotion of Jewish-Muslim understanding. Let's first have an overview of Jews and Muslims in India and Pakistan, their population and geographical distribution. I just told you that Jews have been resident in India. The history of Jewish-Muslim relations in South Asia is as old as Islam itself. As far as the history of Jewish presence in the country is concerned, the oldest documentary evidence that we have of the Jewish presence in India comes from the mid-10th century BCE. My apologies, 10th century CE. This 10th century CE document is a copper plate that records a grant given to a guild of Christians, but it also bears 3 signatures in Hebrew, which is seen as evidence of Jewish presence there. But if we go by their own tradition, then the Jews have been resident in India since King Solomon's reign. But there is nothing in terms of historical evidence to support this claim. Indian Jewry, for most of its history, was represented by only 2 communities, the Bene Israel and the Kochini. Then came the Baghdadi Jews between the decades of 1790s and 1830s. As far as the Bene Israel Jews are concerned, they have been located on the Konkan coast of the state of Maharashtra in India. So both these communities, the Bene Israel and the Kochini, have been located on the western coast of India. Maharashtra is in the north of the state of Kerala, and which was the state that was home to the Bene Israel community, and Kerala is where the city of Cochin is located, also known as Kochi, which was home to the best known of the Jewish communities in India, the Kochini community. Now, the Muslims, when they arrived in this is the geographical region that we are talking about, and the importance of South Asia lies in the fact that 22% of the world's population is Muslim, and 33.3% of these Muslims live in South Asia. When I use the term South Asia, what I imply by that are the countries that are members of this South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. Countries Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. But the most populous of these countries are India and Pakistan. Its importance is also lies in the fact that South Asia is home to some of the largest Islamic movements in the world, such as the Tablighi Jamaat, the largest Sunni Muslim revivalist movement in the world, Jamaat-e-Islami, a prototype of political Islam in South Asia, Darul Uloom Deoband, alleged source of ideological inspiration to the Taliban, and Darul Uloom Nadwatul Ulama of Lucknow. The curriculum prescribed by it is followed by seminaries in many parts of the world. South Asian Muslims have a diaspora larger in number and geographical spread than that of Muslims from any other region of the world. The migration of South Asian Muslims to all corners of the world means that their attitudes in their communities can be highly influential in the wider diaspora, Muslim communities, and indeed beyond. And a testament of their influence is how they influenced the African American Muslims to organize on the basis of religion rather than nationality or culture. And this happened way back in the 1920s. The highest that the population of Jews ever reached in India was just before the creation of the State of Israel. And then the population was in the range of 25,000 to 30,000. Now the Jewish population in India is estimated to be somewhere in the range of 3,000 and 10,000, but the most reliable estimate is that of 5,000. Given this numerical insignificance of Jews in India, and India is the only country to have a Jewish presence in South Asia. There used to be Jews in Pakistan. In 1881, the Jewish population in Pakistan was estimated to be 2,500. By 1941, it dwindled to 1,199. By 1968, most of the Jews of Pakistan had been thrown out, and the number had shrunk to 350. And the last Jew in Pakistan was a lady whose name was Rachel Joseph, who was also the custodian of the Jewish cemetery there. She died in July 2006. So given this numerical insignificance of Jews in the region and the large number of Muslims there, the nature of the relations between Jews and Muslims is largely determined by the attitudes that Muslims have towards Jews. So this again, this slide points out the numerical significance of the Muslim population in the region. Muslims are 14.2% of the total Indian population of 1.3 billion. 17.05% of the world's population lives in India. 172 million Indian Muslims are the world's third largest Muslim population. And with this, and Pakistan is the fifth most populous country, with a population exceeding 212.2 million, 96.28% of which is Muslim, making it the second most populous Muslim country. Now, the only Jew in Pakistan is this man, Faisal bin Khalid. He was born a Muslim in 1987 to a Muslim father and a Muslim mother, but he had a Jewish maternal grandmother from Iran. And then a few years ago, around 2013, he got Judaism mentioned as his religion in his passport. Pakistani passports also mention the religion of the passport holder. So he got his religion changed from Islam to Judaism, which makes him the only Jew officially recognized in Pakistan. And scholars and all experts are also of the view that he is the only Jew there, though very interestingly, The Pakistani Election Commission says that there are 800 Jews in Pakistan, but this has largely been perceived as merely a figment of their imagination. Some of the most important militant organizations, terrorist Islamist organizations, have their presence in the region of Afghanistan and Pakistan, such as Al Qaeda and the Taliban. Given this importance of the region, it is very surprising that those who study Jewish Muslim relations and who have an interest in the betterment of Jewish Muslim relations haven't given this region the attention that it deserves. Generally, what happens is that whenever we talk of Jewish Muslim relations, the focus is almost always on the Middle East, on West Asia, which is largely Arab. And Arabs represent only 18% of the world's Muslim population, whereas 1/3 of the world's Muslims live right here in this region. Not only this, when we talk of Islamist and jihadist anti-Semitism, it has its ideological roots right here in India and Pakistan, which I'll come to later. I mentioned to you that the factor that primarily determines the nature of Jewish-Muslim relations in South Asia are the Muslim attitudes towards Jews and not the other way around. As far as the Muslim attitudes towards Jews are concerned, they range from indifference and ignorance. As far as ignorance is concerned, this ignorance is not peculiar to Muslims, but it is something that is common to all South Asians, irrespective of their religious persuasion. Because of the small numbers of Jews there, most of the South Asians never come into any direct contact with Jews. They know Jews only through secondary sources, which are often not reliable. Now, those secondary sources also vary. In the case of non-Muslims, those secondary sources happen to be either Western literature or the media. In the case of Muslims, there is an additional source, their religious narrative, the polemics in their scripture, and also their press, which often indulges in yellow journalism when it comes to Jews and Zionism and Israel. Yet, in spite of the propaganda unleashed by their press and the overly literal interpretation of the polemics in the Quran, a large section of the Muslim population in the region still remains indifferent to Jews. But there is a section that has, in spite of all this, produced beautiful examples of cordiality with Jews, living as neighbors with Jews in places like Mumbai, where most of the Jews live in predominantly Jewish neighborhoods, and also in Ahmedabad, where Jews and Muslims living in the same neighborhood have produced beautiful examples of cordiality and amity, and which even the Middle East conflict has not been able to dent. But and this is also displayed by the fact that most of the synagogues in Mumbai and Kolkata, all synagogues in Kolkata and almost all synagogues in Mumbai are looked after by Muslim caretakers. Of course, not financially, but the guards, the caretakers are generally Muslims. Most of the students in the Jewish run schools in these cities are Muslim. Most of the Jewish localities are in predominantly Muslim neighborhoods. And the Bene Israel Jews and the Muslims became so close that the Bene Israel even adopted a number of religious and kinship terms. from Muslims. For instance, they have referred to their prayers as namaz. They often call their synagogue masjid. In fact, there is a local station in Mumbai, a local train station in Mumbai, which is called Masjid. Masjid is Marathi variant for masjid. Masjid means mosque. People are deluded into thinking that it is perhaps named after a mosque. In fact, that station, that local train station is named after a synagogue. There are also instances of a number of Jewish-Muslim romances. I have in this slide a number of pictures, which I would be very happy to talk about in the QA when we have the question and answer session. Then this is the world's only Hebrew Qawwal. He is an Israeli, not an Indian Jew, but he lived in India for a number of years, learned Indian music, and now sings in the Islamic mystical musical tradition. Then this is a wonderful book by this author Sadia Shepherd, who was raised by parents from 3 different religions, Christian father, Muslim mother, and a Jewish grandmother, Jewish maternal grandmother. Is an interesting story of a Muslim poet born to a Jewish mother, and then they lost touch with each other. He lost touch with his Jewish mother, and how he is still in search of his Jewish mother. That's a long story. This bearded man on the left is the only professor in India who teaches Hebrew language at an Indian university. As you can see, he's a devout Muslim, a very observant Muslim. On the right is Tawfiq Zakaria. He is the best known Hebrew calligrapher from India, and he happens to be a Muslim. And he established a strong, then there was a conference held in 2013, which was the first ever conference on Hebrew language and culture, which was largely the initiative of Muslim scholars there at JNU. That is the Jawaharlal Nehru University. These are some specimens of the calligraphy done by Tawfiq Zakaria, sorry. Now here is the lady, Sarah Cohen, who came to be widely acknowledged as the matriarch of the Jewish community in Cochin. And Tawfiq Zakaria came to be seen by her as her grandson. And he looked after the lady, and they had a very strong emotional bond. This person is Mohammad Hussain Pathan. He is the only Muslim, who is the only engraver of Jewish tombstones for the entire state of Maharashtra, and he is a Muslim. So we have these, then there are examples of many Jews who got influenced by Sufism and Islam. The best known example is that of Sarmad, who came from Iran, converted to Islam, and became a well-renowned Sufi who is still revered by Muslims as well as Hindus. Then there are also groups among Muslims in South Asia who trace their descent from Jews or from Israel or from lost Israelites, like the Qadwais of district Barabanki. Then there is now their progenitor Qazi Qidwatuddin is believed to have been Jewish. He was born in a Jewish family, and then he converted to, and then his family converted to Islam. I have in this slide pictures of Muhammad Asad and Maryam Jamila, 2 very famous Jewish converts to Islam. Muhammad Asad produced one of the best English translations of the Quran, and Maryam Jamila, who was born Margaret Marcus. She became the most prominent adumbrator of the ideology of Jamaat-e-Islami. Then we have Noor Inayat Khan. Noor Inayat Khan was an Indian from a royal family. She fought for the British against the Nazis in the Second World War. She was a spy in France, in Nazi-occupied France. Then there are groups among Muslims who claim descent from lost Israelites, like the Pashtuns and the Kashmiris. This is the region of the Pashtuns. There's some pictures of Pashtuns. There have been attempts to genetically prove their connection to Israelites, but the results have largely been neutral. In 2015, a Pashtun delegation visited Israel at the invitation of an Israeli organization, Amishav, which is devoted to the search of the remnants of the lost tribes of Israel. This is a picture of that Pashtun delegation. Now, the third category into which the Muslim attitudes fall is that of antipathy, antagonism, and hostility, which is fueled by the rhetoric of the clerics, overly literal interpretation of the polemics in the Quran and the Hadiths. Scholars have also noticed a duality of public rhetoric among Muslim scholars, as pointed out by Professor Kumaraswamy. On the one hand, they oppose Israel, they opposed India's relations with Israel. On the other hand, they very enthusiastically visited Israel when they had the opportunity to do so. Over the years, there has been a rapid rise in anti-Semitism among South Asian Muslims because of the expatriate Indian population in the Middle East. When they return, they are often brainwashed into hating the Jews. These are pictures of some anti-Semitic processions from my hometown, Lucknow, where a Freemason temple has come to be seen as a Jewish establishment in occupation of a structure that originally belonged to a Shia Muslim Imambara. The latest example of Jewish conspiracy theory from South Asia is how a recent attack on Shias in Pakistan was projected by a Canada-based Shia Muslim organization as a Zionist conspiracy. Another reason why anti-Semitism in South Asia, in India and Pakistan, has largely escaped attention is because it has largely not translated into violence. In spite of that, there have been cases of violence, but that violence occurred largely in Pakistan and not in India. There were attacks on Jews in Karachi, the biggest Pakistani city, coinciding with every Arab-Israeli war. And by 1968, all Jews of Pakistan had been thrown out, except for one woman who stayed on to look after the synagogue there, which was demolished in the year 1988 to make way for a shopping mall. It was a synagogue that had come into existence way back in the year 1893, but was demolished in 1988 by the Pakistani dictator Zia-ul-Haq. These attacks we get an account of these attacks in this Hindi novel, Apna Ghar, published in 1961, written by the first Jewish novelist to publish in Hindi, Meera Mahadevan. She was born Miriam Jacob Mendrikar, but she became popular as Meera Mahadevan, the name that she adopted when she married a Hindu Brahmin. These are pictures of that synagogue. There was a play that was put up by some Pakistani students in 1912. I'm sorry, my apologies, in 2012, this was a play that was put up by some Pakistani students on Pakistani Jewry. Then there was an attack on the synagogue in Rangoon in Myanmar in 1967. Then in 2002, Daniel Pearl was beheaded. And this year, the main accused in the case has been acquitted by the Pakistani Supreme Court. In 2008, there were multiple attacks in Mumbai, during which the Chabad Lubavitch Center in Mumbai was also attacked. And it was one of the prime targets, for it was perceived by the terrorists that it would greatly amplify the impact of their attacks if they targeted the Chabad Lubavitch Center there in Mumbai. In 2010, there was a bomb blast very close to the synagogue there. Then in 1991, there was an abduction of several Pakistani tourists in Kashmir, one of whom even died. In 2012, there was a bomb explosion in an Israeli diplomat's car, as a result of which his wife got badly injured, was wounded, and was in hospital for 1 year. We see a proliferation of people on Facebook, Indians and Pakistanis, bearing the name Hitler. And a few examples, these are some screenshots from Facebook of such people, many of whom can't even spell the name Hitler correctly. But there is this admiration for Hitler. So these are the factors that shape the Muslim perceptions of Jews and fuel Muslim antagonism towards Jews, and have in turn also influenced India's policy towards Israel for several decades. I won't say that that Muslim factor is the only factor behind Israel, behind the absence of relations between India and Israel for more than 4 decades, but it certainly was a big factor. There is the Arab-Israeli conflict, the way it is reported in the press, misinterpretation of the Quranic references to Jews, yellow journalism of the Muslim press, particularly in the Urdu language, and anti-Semitic portrayal of Jews in the English fiction. These are the images that go a very long way in shaping South Asian perceptions of Jews and Israelis. Then India has also been a major center of jihadist and Islamist ideology, and anti-Semitism is intertwined with it. And Shah Waliullah is counted as one of the 3 leading renewal advocates who are often considered the originators of pan-Islamism, with the other 2 being Najdi Muhammad Ibn Abdul Wahab and Nigerian Uthman Dan Fodio. Then there is Maududi. Maulana Maududi came up with the concept of Jahiliya. His writings were later translated into Arabic by this cleric, Maulana Abul Hasan Ali Nadwi, which were read by Sayyid Qutb of the Muslim Brotherhood, who later popularized this hate ideology across the Arab world. This same person, Maulana Abul Hasan Ali Nadwi, was also the founding chairman of the trustees of the Oxford Center for Islamic Studies. Here are some quotes. Israr Ahmad was a very popular cleric in Pakistan, and Pakistan conferred its 3rd highest civilian award on him in 1981, and he called the Jews the agents of the archdevil in Islam. Zakir Naik is infamous for his hate propaganda against Jews, and he keeps telling his audiences that Jews are the most powerful group of people in the world, and the Quran warns that they are Muslims' staunchest enemies. Then there are many other clerics who have been indulging in anti-Semitic rhetoric. He is Pakistan's national poet, and in one of his couplets, he says, "The veins and life of the English people are in the clutches of Jews." And this is constantly used by anti-Semites there. Atish Tasir is a well-known author, and he writes about casual anti-Semitism in Pakistan and narrates an incident when his father, Salman Tasir, who was the governor of the most populous state there in Pakistan, how casually he indulged in a minimization of the Holocaust. Then this is Asif Muhammad Khan, an Indian politician. During the recent 2019 elections, he tried to project his political opponent, Atishi Marlena, as a Jewish candidate, believing that this would disqualify her in the eyes of the Muslim voters of the constituency, and he kept harping that Jews had no place in Indian society. Yet the Election Commission of India took no notice of it. Basim Tibbi is a well-known scholar, and he says that there has been a transplantation of a synthesis. There has been a transplantation of Western anti-Semitism, and now as a result of that, there has been a synthesis of Western anti-Semitism and polemics in Islam against Jews. That is what fuels Islamist jihadism and anti-Semitism now. So this is another quote from Hanaz Aafreedi, told you about the yellow journalism. The Urdu press is largely views oriented, and newspapers and magazines thrive and sell on anti-Semitism. Jewish global conspiracy theories are common. Now, unfortunately, this was an article that I had written. My article was simply titled Jews in Lucknow, but a subtitle was added to it by the editors of this magazine, Moneylender and The Watchmaker, which only go to strengthen a stereotype of Jews. Not only this, they illustrated this article of mine with this anti-Semitic caricature. The feature editor of the magazine was a Shia Muslim, Mehru Jafar. When I raised objection, she took no notice of that, and the magazine never published any apology. All it did was to republish my article without the caricature. That is all that it did later. So these are the images, these are the fictional characters that shape Muslim perceptions of Jews. I've pointed out the importance of Muslim attitudes towards Jews in South Asia because of the widespread diaspora, which is also numerically strong. They also have influence on Muslims elsewhere in the world. They can influence global Muslim attitudes towards Jews. India abstained from having diplomatic relations with Israel for 4 decades because of the concern that the Indian politicians would lose the Muslim support. This was certainly not the only reason. There were other reasons too, but this was, in any case, one of the major reasons. Now, when it comes to Jewish attitudes towards Muslims, Jewish attitudes towards Muslims range from sympathy, as displayed in the depiction of the plight of Muslims in fiction, produced by Jewish authors like Esther David, Robin David, and Sheila Rohekar. There have also been attempts by Jews to distance themselves from Muslims and display support for Hindu nationalism because of the pressure of self-preservation felt by them. And the third element is that of a degree of bitterness and suspicion for Muslims, given the polemics against Jews in their scriptures and religious literature and anti-Semitic rhetoric in some sections of the Muslim population, compounded by attacks on Jews in Israel and elsewhere by Islamist terrorists, which is manifested in different ways in many groups on Facebook. For instance, there is this India-Israel Alliance, but you would notice if you apply for membership of this group, you get this question: will you maintain the secrecy of posts and maintain decency? So many of the groups on Facebook that are aimed at promoting friendship between Indians and Israelis turn into places where Islamophobic content thrives, which are hijacked by people who simply want to indulge in anti-Muslim rhetoric. This also happens, as is the case with India-Israel Connect as well. Now, the measures required for the promotion of Jewish-Muslim understanding: introduction of Jewish history at the tertiary level of education and raising of Holocaust awareness, translation and production of relevant literature and cinema in all major South Asian languages, correct interpretation of polemics in scriptures and religious literature, and promotion of direct interaction between Jews and Muslims. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Navras. That was amazing. Thank you so much. There's so much more to talk about, but I already have some really excellent questions. We have a question from Yasmin, a member of our congregation. She says that you mentioned 3 categories of attitudes on the part of Muslims towards Jews, the indifference or ignorance, the amity and antipathy. Do you have an idea of percentage of Muslims who are ignorant, percentage who are friendly, percentage who are hostile?
I'm in no position to.
What's the predominant attitude?
Yes, I think the predominant attitude is that of indifference and ignorance. But the problem is that the sections of Muslims that are antagonistic towards Jews, that are hostile towards Jews, that have antipathy towards Jews, that is the section which is the most vocal.
I see. Good, thank you. I also have a question from a colleague, a brilliant young scholar, Mehak Bursa, and she lives in India. She's asking about the popularity of Mein Kampf in India. She says it was on the bestseller list in 2011. Who's reading it, and why is it so popular? Is it indeed such a bestseller?
Yes, it is. Hitler, I don't think any other foreign leader is as popular in India as Hitler is. There are shops named after Hitler, there are products named after Hitler, and Hitler's autobiography and biographies of Hitler are almost omnipresent across the country in all of India's major languages. In sharp contrast to this, you would be at a loss to find anything of significance in terms of literature on the Holocaust in any of India's major languages.
Yes.
As far as India's most widely spoken and understood language, Hindi, is concerned, to the best of my knowledge, the only Holocaust literature in the Hindi language is a collection of frequently asked questions published by Yad Vashem. And that too was of a very poor quality. Other than that, there is the Diary of Anne Frank, which is available in its Hindi translation. There is a collection of Tadeusz Borowski's short stories in Hindi. This Way for Gas, Ladies and Gentlemen. And
Wow.
That's it. That is all that we have in the Hindi language.
What about Night?
On the Holocaust. Yeah, yes, I in fact intend to translate Elie Wiesel's Night into Hindi and Urdu.
Very good, good.
That is on my agenda. Now, in sharp contrast to that, Hitler is so immensely popular. In fact, there is this cult of strong leader in India. India could never get out of that. Even when India was under the British rule, India could be broadly divided into 2 sections. One section was that of the territory of India that was under direct British rule, and the other section was of more than 500 principalities that were feudatories to the British, that were independent in their internal matters, but did not enjoy any sovereignty. So even after India got independence in 1947 and was declared a republic, Indians still continued to believe in rulers and kings and dynasties and have this immense faith in strong leaders. They do not seem to have good examples of strong leaders. They are ignorant of David Ben-Gurion or even of other strong leaders in the world. And this is one reason. Second is that Hitler talked of the Aryan descent of Germans, and North Indians believe in being of Aryan origin. And Indians, in spite of this, Indians are ignorant of what Hitler thought about Indians.
I see.
So that is there, and his adoption of swastika and his building a huge empire in Europe is seen by great admiration by Indians. And then there is also this delusion that this Indian nationalist leader, Subhash Chandra Bose, went to Germany, met Hitler, tried to obtain military assistance from him against the British to liberate the country from British rule, though he wasn't successful. Yet, this deludes Indians into believing that perhaps Subhash Chandra Bose did receive military assistance from Hitler. And hence Hitler was a friend to India.
Yes, that the Hindus, they're influenced by.
Well, I have another question. A follow-up from Yasmin. You mentioned what can be done about in the last portion of your talk. I mean, what's next, and what might be a place to start, or the most efficient way to lead to a better understanding between Muslims and Jews in South Asia?
We need a revolution in education. That is all that can bring about a change. We have to have Jewish education of Jewish history at the secondary level, because Dina Porat has pointed out merely talking about the Holocaust doesn't help, because even if you tell people about the Holocaust, then people tend to ask that why was this genocide perpetrated against Jews? They must have done something. They perhaps asked for it. So it has to be put in proper context. They have to be aware as to how there has been a long history of anti-Semitism in Europe. And without that anti-Semitism, this would have never happened.
But just from my other discussions with you, and you might comment on this, there's very little, as you've just said, in the way of studying Jewish history, Judaism in India, but perhaps there's even less in the way of studying anti-Semitism itself.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
People are absolutely ignorant of anti-Semitism. And it is for this reason that during the elections, a politician can openly try to disqualify a political rival by simply calling her Jewish. And it goes absolutely unnoticed. And even in response to that, the lady who was called Jewish, who in fact wasn't Jewish, all she did was to try to prove to the voters that she wasn't Jewish. She did not notice the inherent anti-Semitism in it and did not bother to condemn it at all. Though she has studied at premier institutions in the West, in spite of that, she made no effort to condemn it.
I have another question. Does the anti-Semitic rhetoric, or the Muslim anti-Semitism, particularly, especially jihadist anti-Semitism, does that spill over into the Hindu population at all?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But this should not delude us into thinking that anti-Semitism is absent in among the Hindu nationalists. In fact, Holocaust is very commonly used as a trope against Muslims in the country to say that Holocaust was not the biggest genocide. The biggest genocide was what was perpetrated by Muslims upon the Hindus of the country during the centuries-long rule of theirs in India. Then another anti-Semitic element is how the Jews are projected as a model minority in the country to underscore the great tolerance of the Hindus, to point out that Hindus were so tolerant that they tolerated a people who could not be tolerated by anybody else in the world.
Yes. Well, let me ask you, you mentioned the Aafreedi DNA. What could you say something about what brought you to this area of learning and research and study? It's not, as you've noted, it isn't very common where you live for a scholar to take up this subject matter. And
That's true.
I just want to add for the people on, this is not just a matter of curiosity where you live, but it's a matter of great courage on your part. And you're to be admired for it. But tell us a little what brought you to this.
Well, I was born to a mixed background. I come from a mixed background, and I grew up in a very eclectic environment. My father was born in a Muslim family, and at the age of 10, he decided to live the rest of his life without any religion. Decades later, he fell in love with a lady who came from a Hindu Sikh parentage. My mother got married to her, and my parents raised me without any religion. My paternal ancestors settled in India between the years 1748 and 1761. They were Pashtuns who came from northwestern Pakistan and eastern Afghanistan. The region that they came from is now part of Pakistan, though it originally belonged to Afghanistan. And Pashtuns for ages have had this tradition of descent from the lost tribes of Israel. Today, the number of those who claim descent from the lost tribes of Israel is estimated to be equal to the number of Jews in the world. The Jewish population, the global Jewish population, is estimated to be around 15 million. And those who claim descent from the lost tribes of Israel are estimated to be just as many. But of all these claimants of Israelite descent, the Pashtuns stand out because this tradition of theirs has been written about for centuries by Jewish, Christian, and Muslim scholars alike. Another thing that distinguishes the Pashtuns from the other claimants of Israelite descent is that they have no intentions of ever migrating to Israel. They are just as hostile and antagonistic towards the state of Israel as Muslims anywhere else in the world. Yet they take great pride in tracing descent from the biblical patriarchs.
Yes. Very interesting. I think I have with time for one more. In fact, it's a comment you may want to comment on from June, who writes, the Bene Israel have a story of two soldiers whose lives were saved by Tipu Sultan because they were people of the book. Do you know?
Yes, that's right. That's true. And the British rule had two phases. It was the East India Company that established rule over certain territories of India. And then the control was passed on to the British government after 1857, when there was a big revolt in the country, a Sepoy mutiny. Prior to 1857, almost half of the officer strength of the Bombay Presidency Army was manned by Ben Israel soldiers. Ben Israel did splendidly well under the British, and the British fought a war with a sultan there in South India, Tipu Sultan. And there were these Ben Israel soldiers fighting for the British who were also imprisoned, who were caught. And when Tipu Sultan's mother came to know of the capture of these Jewish soldiers, she immediately persuaded her son, the monarch, the sultan, to release them, because she said that she had read good things about Jews in the Quran and we must be kind to them. And when those soldiers were released, one of them, in order to express his gratitude to God, built the first Bene Israel synagogue in Mumbai. Prior to that, the Bene Israel had never had any synagogues, and the observance of Judaism had been very minimal in nature. In fact, a Jewish renaissance, a religious revival was brought about in the Bene Israel community by the Jews from Cochin when they came in their contact, and interestingly, also by Christian missionaries. Christian missionaries translated the Bible into Marathi and Konkani, the languages that they spoke, believing that this would enable them to convert them to Christianity. But the Bene Israel were very clever. They took from the Christian missionaries what they were interested in. For the first time, they were able to read their scriptures in their own language. They also learned English from the Christian missionaries, which led to their transformation from a rural community into an urban community, because with the knowledge of English, they became employable for the British. They got into civil services, into railways, into clerical jobs, and that completely changed the community. And this all this happened as a result of their interaction with Christian missionaries. But they refused to convert to Christianity in spite of all their efforts.
Well, you see what a single act of mercy can lead to. When the Sultan released the two Jewish soldiers. Dr. Aafreedi, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the publication of your collection of essays that's coming out soon. You want to just mention the title of that?
Yes. Professor Patterson has been very kind to contribute to a volume I'm co-editing with a political scientist. The volume is titled Conceptualizing Mass Violence. It would be brought out by Routledge in May this year. So that's it.
Very good.
Thank you very much to everybody for joining for this session. My apologies for my strong Indian accent. And many thanks once again to Professor Patterson for recommending my name, to Mr. Siegel for organizing this talk, and to Congregation Nishmat Am.
Yes, and I'm going to return this to Rabbi Cohen for just a few minutes and say once again, thank you. I'm even deeper in your debt. Navras, my friend. Rabbi Cohen.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Dr. Aafreedi, I cannot tell you how exceedingly grateful we are to you for such a wonderful, wonderful, insightful, and enlightening lecture. Absolutely phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I learned so much. I learned so much. And I hope you'll be back. I hope you'll be back with us. You're absolutely phenomenal. God bless you. God bless you and give you much strength to continue in your very important and sacred work.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
God bless you. And my friends, should you want to make a contribution to Congregation Nishmat Am, the information is on your screen. This is certainly the week before Purim, and this is traditionally a good time to share what we have with those less fortunate, to make contributions to synagogues and to houses of worship. And we thank you in advance for your generosity. Once again, a hearty Yasher Koach. God bless you all for tuning in on Zoom, and please join us next lecture. I don't have maybe Dr. Pedersen has all the information for the next lecture and the date.
The next lecture is by Dr. Luis Cortez. It's on Sunday, March 14th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and he's going to speak about one of the famous conversos in Spain, Fray Luis de Leon, and the controversies surrounding his Jewish background. Dr. Cortez has been with us in the past, and
Yes.
who have seen him know that he is an extremely engaging and brilliant speaker. So watch for the announcements. Sunday, March 14th, 1 o'clock.
Yes, definitely join us. I had the great pleasure of hearing Dr. Cortez and meeting him, and he is absolutely phenomenal, amazing, as Dr. Pedersen had just told you. So please join us, and God bless you all. God bless you all, and come join us again and again and again. All the best in the world to all of you. And Dr. Aafreedi, again, God bless you.
Thank you very much, Professor Rabbi Cohen. Thank you very much.
Just made me a professor. That's good. I like that.
Laila Tov.
Laila Tov, Laila Tov. By the way, this lecture is brought to you directly from India, just in case you didn't realize, you know. So we say Laila Tov, a good evening, a good night to Dr. Aafreedi and to everybody in India. And here we say Sohoraim Tovim, a wonderful noon. To all of you, God bless. God bless.
All of you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Dr. Patterson, for making this possible. God bless. And Stanley Siegel, the greatest. All the best.
Thank you, Dr. Aafreedi. It was a wonderful lecture. Thank you, Rabbi. And
बहुत धन्यवाद, शुक्रिया. Thank you.
Oh, Nawaze, shukriya, mehrbani. So I'll take your leave now. Bye-bye.